doesn't mean anything to anybody. It occurred on December the 18th to the 29th in 1972 at the very end of the war. If you can remember the Vietnam War and the Paris peace talks, the Paris peace talks would go on and then they would go off, and then they would go on and then they would go off. And I believe that President Nixon probably got tired and fed up and said enough is enough and we're going to end the war. And so he put this massive plan together called Linebacker 2. Now at this time we had over 600 prisoners of war in Hanoi Hilton, and he wanted to get them home. Some of them had been in prison camp for over 8 years, 8.5 years to be specific. He wanted to end the war. And so he tasked the United States Air Force, 7th Air Force, and the United States Navy 7th Fleet to combine forces and bring the war to an end. Linebacker 2. They often call it the 11 Days of Christmas. I took part in that operation as a 25-year-old Lieutenant JG. The picture that you see is pretty accurate with the amount of missiles that are being shot, with the bombs that are going off on the ground. This is a B-52 airplane, Air Force B-52, just to give you an idea of the amount of weapons that were dropped. Every B-52 carried 205 500-pound bombs, every one of them. And they would come in waves of 3 and cells of about 30. We would do round-the-clock bombing of that country, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 11 days. There was no stop. There were 5 carriers in the Gulf of Tonkin. 3 of those carriers flew from midnight to noon. The other 2 carriers flew from noon to midnight. This Air Force operated out of Thailand and out of Guam. There were bombs dropping on that country every hour of every day. So you can imagine they decided to call it quits. It was massive, it was destructive, but at the same time, we took a heavy loss. As you can see, the U.S. lost 28 airplanes. 12 of them were tactical airplanes. 16 of them were B-52 bombers, like the one you see here. 43 men were killed. 49 were captured as a POW. Next slide, please. Okay, I don't think this is gonna work.
Go back.
No, this is, we can't hear it.
I could hear it if you put the.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, just put the speaker up there. I could hear it from the back.
No, that's okay, just I'll keep going. Run it again, I guess. No, go back. No, not play this.
Well, where do I start?
I was a newly married naval officer flying an airplane called a F-8 Crusader, which was a fighter that could go 1,000 miles an hour.
It was a very dark afternoon with thunderstorms all around and heavy except right over High Farm. That was low and fast, as fast as a plane would go.
I dove down through the clouds.
I put myself right behind him like this. I came down in formation. There were tracers coming by me. There's flak all over the place.
And they were coming so fast that before I could even say anything to stand, boom, we took a hit.
I can remember seeing these little fireflies coming up through the floorboard.
The airplane wrapped up, twisted and turned. I think it broke apart.
I think there was a very, very brief moment. Do I just ride this thing in rather than be a POW?
About halfway down, I said, I'm not getting out of this thing. I do not want to get captured.
You can't imagine, at that moment in time, losing everything. Your freedom, your health, family, home.
I guess the first time I felt defeat was in the parachute, because I had never really imagined myself ever jumping out of that airplane.
I came to my senses and I said, I can't do that, I've got to try to survive.
As I went out of that airplane and as I got out into that parachute, I knew that my life had changed forever.
The bad day continued. And before I had my helmet off, I was a prisoner for approximately 2,251 days, 10 hours, and 20 minutes.
The 90-second transition, I think, from king of the skies to scum of the earth was the transition into a defeatist mentality. And then it got worse.
The adrenaline started to wear off. Because I started to feel very tired, and I started to hurt.
That's when I entered the dreaded Wallow prison.
I was not prepared for the very intense treatment that I got.
We military people are sworn to abide by a code called the Big Four.
But they immediately want to go further, so that started a long hard 2 weeks of brutal treatment for me.
They took parachute riser cord and put a tourniquet above my elbows and pulled me up off the ground.
Arms behind your back, over your shoulders, dislocate your shoulders.
I was in just a quivering mass of bent bones and flesh piled in the middle of the floor.
When you're flying state-of-the-art aircraft, you're above reproach. You think you're macho man. After about a day of that, they can break any man.
They broke me, and they did break me, breaking you down to where you no longer are you.
I used to agonize thinking about somebody was they're really getting hurt, and you start yelling to get them to stop.
Paul Maloney was risking his life trying to communicate with me. He completely turned me around from suicidal ideation, if you will.
There's no Iron Man in that environment.
It was the most devastating moment of my life. I'm just not an honorable person. I don't know that I can take this anymore anyway, so I made a conscious decision to commit suicide. And I was down. I was really, really, really down. When would you break? What was worth fighting for in your heart?
I feel miserable about who I am and what I've done.
I was very disappointed in myself.
We were convinced we were all going to be court-martialed when we came home.
And that guilt follows me even to today.
When you know a man is beaten down, you want to kind of help pick him up and bring him back into the fold and give that guy a second chance. But a lot of the guys kind of withdrew, and we found out if you were out of the communication system that we had for more than 30 days, you went off the deep end.
It was life or death that we communicate with each other.
We developed this code, and it was called the AFLQ
communication was scratching on the wall. I reached around my head like this, and I went tap, tap. And we would tap on the pipes, and they would hear us in nearby buildings. Our covert communication was our salvation.
And now, as CAG says,
And maintaining military rank structure and discipline, because that's what gave you your power and your strength.
Our resistance policy had been established right from the start. The code of conduct really set the rules of behavior.
The longer you were there, the more you heard about the rules. The leadership in this prison camp is the best you will ever see, bar none.
We called ourselves the Alcatraz 11.
Alcatraz was really a challenge.
Our ticket into this group was because the Vietnamese saw we were leaders.
Stockdale's marching orders passed through. He put this together. It was an acronym that spelled BACK US. US was unity over self. Our unity, our adherence to each other and to our ideals, to our entire existence was based on being American servicemen. That was pretty important then, and it should be now and forever. If you're an American, you're an American.
We are a great, incredibly great country.
Bob Shoemaker said, pull up your big boy pants. We still have a mission. We have a war to fight. The more they went after us, the stronger we got as a group.
we ran our own plan of the day. This is how you'll set up seniority, when you'll communicate. You know, this is when you'll sleep.
You just joined a team of men better than any team you'll ever play on.
Return with honor was a nice objective that we could pass to everyone, and it was our objective as the seniors to make sure that our juniors felt the same way as they did.
That is how I got stronger.
Here, we got one message. We're going to stick together. We're going to return with honor, because that's what Admiral Stockdale told us we were going to do. And he was right. The C-141s that came in to pick us up.
The grandest sight that I ever saw was this C-141 sitting out on the tarmac out there with this big American flag on the tail.
Well, they had that flag on their tail. When I saw it, I knew I was going home.
The one thing that's so important and stays constant is a person's sense of honor.
I think it all ties in. It's all part of the story. I lived. I beat him. I lived.
I think that's what CAG wanted us to do.
It's a big story. Those of us that you've met or you've interviewed or you can talk to about this, we've all gone through that crucible of fire. We've descended into that labyrinth and we've faced the dragon.